Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Alex Smith. Alex, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So Alex and I know each other through his mother, April Crossley, and her husband, Justin. And I wanted to get a perspective, sit down and talk to Alex about what it was kind of like when his mom and Justin first told him that they were going to sell all their stuff and live in an RV full time. Because you know, the title of the podcast is The Journey of My Mother's Son. So I was kind of in Alex's shoes at one point when my mom called me and told me that she was going to, um, you know, start traveling around the country in an old 1967 Plymouth Valiant. And I was a lot younger when I got that call than what you were. I was only 16 years old at that time. I was living
Yeah,
in Pennsylvania. She was living in Florida. And part of me was just like, wow, man, that's cool. And then the other part, for years and years, as much as I respected what she did, I never would have envisioned myself doing the same thing. And even when I first ran it by my wife, she kind of thought I had lost it a little bit. And I think, one of the things is, yeah, it's cool, knowing your mom did that, but that doesn't mean we have to do it.
yeah,
um,
yeah.
but
Right.
after a while, she got on board, and she enjoys it just as much as what I do, for sure. So, so what was that like, Alex? When was it? Did she sit you down in a room? Did she call you on the phone? I mean, how did she break the news that they were going
Yeah,
to sell
it
everything?
was it was pretty interesting. Just the unraveling of events. I was definitely like not the same age as you. At 16, if I got that news, they would be like, how could you? How could you do that to me? And that it wasn't quite like that for me. But it kind of started with, hey, I'm buying a house and I'm moving out. And I moved down to 45 minutes away. I live in Pennsylvania, so I moved to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I'm originally from Reading, just for a change of pace and to get a little bit of a small city life, which you may or may not hear the neighborly effects of right now in the background of people driving by or having a party at the house. But either way, so I told her, hey, I'm buying a house, I'm moving out, I'm ready to kind of take these steps, and she's like, well, if you're moving out, I really don't need to be here. And kind of came at a point in her life where she wanted to change. She was, working in her business by herself for a very long time. And then she just at that same time started getting like team members and people to take things off her plate. And she was like, wow, actually, like having someone else do something aside from me doing everything myself is a really, really nice thing. And I was like, yeah, believe it or not, doing it all yourself will drive you mad. So all at the same time, I'm kind of, leaving the coop, so to speak. And then she's also getting people taking things off her plate, and she enjoyed that experience. So going from there, like she approached me and just said, hey, I think we're going to sell the house. And I was like, that's cool. Sell the house. The market's hot. Do it. It's crazy time to sell. And she goes, I said, you're going to have a tough time buying, though. And she says, I don't know if we're going to buy anything for a while. I was like, what do you mean you're not going to buy anything for a while? But either way, they said, yeah, we have the RV. We want to travel. We want to check places out and see the West. And I said, wow, you should. You really should. It it was just a really defining moment for them, I think, to be able to be like, okay, like we need to pick up roots and try to go out west. And I think they did that. They lived out there for almost a year total, with visits back and forth by plane. But yeah, it was, the experience of being told was definitely me going like, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it all day. Because when I was younger, I had a small similar experience of kind of just like, taking off and checking out a few places. And honestly, it was like something that is a defining moment for me. So I felt like they needed to experience that for themselves. They had small experiences visiting family out west, and they really loved it. So it was a good time, man. It was them kind of fleeing their own coop as I flew the coop at the same time. We were all experiencing this like new world together in our own individual spaces.
Yeah, that's so cool. And again, the opportunity to, to meet the people that we've been able to meet on this journey. And I'm sure for them, it's the same way. It's hard to really put that experience into words. But definitely something I think everybody should experience is, getting out there and just talking to people and connecting with people and getting people's different perspectives and understanding that at the end of the day, we may have all these different beliefs in, all kinds of different things, but at the end of the day, we are still human and we're still connected by wanting to connect with other people. And, that's been the thing that's been so cool for Sandy and I on this journey is just, being able to connect with people who've been, had the courage to do what, your mom and Justin did and said, you know what, we don't need to live in a house and, do the maintenance on it and pay the property taxes and all that sort of stuff. We can conduct our lives, pretty well right out there on the road too. So,
Yeah.
it is interesting. And I reflect back to when Sandy and I told our kids, and we got them all together. And they had all been out of the house for a long time. And, the range of emotions, we have 4 kids. So, the range of emotions between those 4 was broad. Some were like, wow, this is really cool. And others were like, have you completely lost your mind? Are you sure you want to do this? And, by the end of our little kind of picnic that we had them all up at the house to do it, by the end of that, they're all walking around the house saying, hey, before you sell this, can I get this, this piece of furniture that's in the bathroom or this piece of furniture in the bedroom? So by that time we're like, all right, I guess they adapted pretty well. So it is interesting. And I like to, again, get that perspective of, what it was like for you to get that news. And like I said, for me, it was,
well,
go ahead.
For what it's worth, the free TV, hand-me-down TV I got out of it really smoothed things over.
There you go. Yeah, because like I said, when my mom gave me the news, I mean, again, I was living in Pennsylvania. She was living in Florida. So, I was living with my dad. They were divorced. So it wasn't like she was, leaving me or abandoning me or anything like that. But it was still interesting. And knowing that she had the courage to do that was, I don't think at the time when I was 16, I really grasped it. But as she got older, and after she'd passed away, then I really kind of understood you know, what it really took for her to do that, especially in the mid 1980s, for a single woman to be driving around. And like I said, she didn't even have an RV. She had a 1967 Plymouth Valiant. So it was pretty wild. Yeah, she later graduated to a little Toyota camper, but the bulk of it was done in this old 67 Valiant, which is, again, pretty wild when you think about it. Overall,
for sure. She loved it enough to upgrade, though, and that's what's important. At the end of it, she thought, we're going to upgrade to the next one. We're not going back. So I really like that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So you've been able to meet up with your mom and Justin and visit with them. I mean, that's actually where we met, because we happened to be in the same campground as what they were in Idaho, just outside of Yellowstone, and got to meet you and your fiance, which was cool. And it was really cool for, that was actually, and I'm sure you know this, but that was really the first time that I met your mom in person. We had just had been connected through social media and had this kind of, she had put a post out there, saying, hey, if any of my Facebook friends would have the opportunity to sell everything and live in an RV, would you do it? And this was probably 2 weeks after Sandy and I had bought the RV and the house is on the market. Well, actually, I think the house came off the market at that point because we were in the heart of COVID. So I posted a picture of our RV and I said, not only would we do it, but we are doing it. And we just kind of connected from that time. But so that was really the first time that we, met each other in the flesh, so to speak. And then it was funny because, I found out that I'd worked with Justin's sister, and there are all these other mutual connections that we had with both of them, and it was a really enjoyable time. And then to be able to meet you guys was cool. So, how many different times have you been able to connect with them out on the road where you guys went out and visited them?
So there was a few stints where they did just like 3 to 6 months before they permanently went full crazy, as we say. But they did a few stints where they would just go to Arizona for the winter months just to kind of snowbird. They'd be on public land there, BLM land, and I got to visit them each of those times, and that was 3 visits over 3 years. When they went out for permanence, for 2021, or the majority of 2021 into late 2020, I went out to visit them twice. I got to see them in Arizona, and then I got to visit them again when we came to visit you in Montana, Idaho area. The second time we went out we went for 2 weeks actually, and we got to see, there's a lot of land to cover up in Montana, Yellowstone. There's a lot to see. So we were definitely aware of that, and made sure to book a longer vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, was there anything in particular on either of those visits where, it was kind of like an aha moment for you where, wow, these guys are doing the right thing. Like they are really living their life to the fullest at this point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every time I went out there, I'm like, yeah, you're doing it. Honestly, when I was 18, I was working for a construction company, and I was doing 50 to 60 hours a week. And I was fresh out of high school, but I didn't want to go to college. I was like convinced of it. I was like, I don't want to go to college. I just want to work. So I went right to work. I learned a trade, and I started working in the trade. Like, I'd say 14 months into it, I'm busting my butt, and I'm just saying to my mom, I'm like, I'm lost. I'm really, really lost here. I don't know what to do. I feel like I really don't have a picture of where I'm going right now. I feel like I'm in something that's semi-dead end. And she's like, you just need to figure that out. Like, you need to do what you need to do to figure it out. And to continue, I show up to work one day, and I'm thinking of like places I've been in, and I'm just like kind of out of it. And I said to my boss, I'm like, I need time, like off, like mental health, whatever you want to call it. I need time off. And a buddy of mine said, hey, my brother just moved to Colorado. Do you want to go visit him? And I said, yeah, I'd be interested in that. And I said, my uncle lives in Laramie, Wyoming. I went to see him once. Would you be interested in visiting him? He said, yeah, whatever. We're going to drive 30 hours to Colorado. We might as well drive 5 more to Wyoming. And I was like, I've never been to California before. He said, so why don't we go there too? I was like, I don't have a place to stay. He said, how about we take your brand new car and we sleep in that? And being the 18-year-old I said, all right, sounds like a great idea. So we ended up taking this 3-week long trip. But before I went, I said to my mom, I'm like, hey, I'm taking time off. I feel like I need to take this trip. And any mother would say, you're batshit crazy, and you need to, book flights and have Airbnbs and a place to be all the time. And, but my mom said, you need to do this for you. You need to figure out what you need to do. You need to see places. You need to take risks. So long story short, I take this long trip, and the entire time I'm just asking myself, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Where am I going? Why am I going to work when you can literally wake up and look at this every day? And I was in cold weather camping with a small propane heater in a tent, and I was having the time of my life. Like, I literally loved it. So when they were taking their trip and they got to do all these experiences, I think it was something similar for them too. Essentially everywhere they got to go, they had this like eye-opening, like, there's something bigger than what we're trying to experience. You get caught up in these day-to-day things, and then you stand in front of a waterfall that's 400 times the size of you, and you say, there's something bigger here. And in my personal experience, we are really into the national park. So, we went to Joshua Tree, and there's just, out of nowhere. Have you been to Joshua Tree, Dan? Have you got to experience it?
Not
No.
yet.
So it's really weird because you'll drive and it's a little bit hilly, semi-deserty, and then out of nowhere, it's just fields of Joyo cactus, just fields and fields for acres. And you're like, this is weird. Drive through that and then up and over another ridge, and you'll just be in this area where it's just huge boulders, like someone dropped them out of the sky for acres and acres and acres, gigantic boulders that are perfectly smooth and cylindrical. And you're like, this is strange. And then you go over the next ridge and it's just acres of Joshua trees, which are completely different type of tree that's found nowhere else. So these things that you're just like, there's something else that's bigger here behind all of this. Like I'm not sure what it is, but those experiences that make me feel little, going to Yellowstone and seeing the thermal activity, or going to the Tetons and hiking the mountains, big things that make me feel little, or what I say, when you look into the stars and you feel like they're so far away and you're so tiny, and how does anything on this planet, really matter or coexist when there's so much bigger things that we don't understand. Yeah. That's the feeling I seek out. And I feel like that's the feeling you get when you kind of go on the edge of something, when you take a risk that is unconventional and it ends up working out for you. And in the process, you get to see these amazing things and amazing experiences. And that's what I think RVing for my parents has been. And I think that's the place I'm trying to get to. So when I go and visit them and I see them in an RV 15 minutes from Yellowstone, and I'm in the city of Lancaster and my neighbor's blaring music, I'm like, man, this is just step one of the plan to get to RVing full time and being a little freer than, the lockdown lifestyle that I live now,
Yeah. And that's, so many people ask Sandy and I, like, what's been the best experience that you've had on this journey? And we can't nail it down, because every time, like you were talking about as you drove through Joshua Tree, every time you see something that you think is the, epitome, so to speak,
yeah,
go across the next ridge and there's something even cooler than what you just experienced. So we'll try to narrow it down, but we just can't pinpoint it. There's been so many incredible experiences that we've had on this journey that, the only thing I can tell people is, like, just take the chance and do it at some point, even if it's like what you did for just 3 weeks when you were younger. Get out there and see something beyond, Berks County and Lancaster County at that point. There's just definitely so much more to experience. And when you see the different, all the different cultures that we have just right here in our own country is, incredible to take it all in and to meet all those different people. It's been so awesome so far.
And a great book I would recommend to that effect as well is called Vagabonding by Rolf Potts, ROLF POTTS. It's a book that Rolf Potts was a traveler, and he did Southeast Asia, Africa, Middle East. He's been all over. North America was his first trip, but he has a whole book on the things he's learned about vagabonding, about traveling, and specifically traveling on a budget and being super thrifty about it. It's a lot of no nonsense, a little bit about the spirit of traveling and kind of, taking things as they come and making mistakes and being okay with that, because I'm sure, as you've experienced, when you're towing a trailer or you're driving an RV, there's things to be maintained and mistakes that happen. Things happen that are unexpected, and overcoming that is part of it. Vagabonding by Rolf Potts. It's an excellent, excellent book. It talks about how to kind of be free, travel freely, and essentially live a better life than being locked down to something, and the benefits from that, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always about making adjustments. I mean, I got the RV a little too close to a tree branch the other week on one of our last days in Arizona, and our rear ladder is quite mangled right now. So we're in the process of waiting for a part to come in, and hopefully it comes in before we leave Texas here, we'll have to end up getting it shipped to another facility to actually get it repaired because, of course, nowadays parts don't come in, the next week. Everything takes, 6 to 8 weeks to get in. So it's pretty crazy. Yeah, there's always an experience. There's always adjustments to make. And it's, again, I highly recommend it. I mean, when you did that little 3-week trip, once you got back to Pennsylvania, is that when you made the decision to get into real estate, or what led you to what you're doing today?
It took me a little bit of time to kind of process, I think, what I wanted and what I needed. So I got back and I worked at this job for, six more months, I think. And then I got to the end of that line and I was like, I'm kind of sick of doing this. And I moved on to, hey, my parents are in real estate. I think it's something I could do. Ended up trying to get my license. And in the meantime, I also worked for, a few different jobs that were part-time, but gave me some experience at other levels of things. And while I was getting my license, and then I got my license, and, Justin started mentoring me on how to be an agent and how to go through that process. But ultimately the goal was just kind of to work a little more for myself and a little less for somebody else. Yeah. Being an agent, there's still like things you have to do. And at the end of the day, I work for my clients, but at least I set the expectation up front of like, this is how my business functions, and this is how I work, and hopefully we can work together. And at the end of the day, if I don't want to work with someone, I don't have to. So that's always the ultimate benefit of being self-employed. So yeah, the experience of working like in construction, it brought me as much like clarity in the negative as it did in the positive. The positives of working in a small business is that you have a constant line to the owner. It was a small construction company, but the negative is also if that owner is kind of an a-hole, then you have to suffer through those days. On the other side, having to wake up and drive 40 minutes to my job site every morning and be there by 6. I didn't like that. That wasn't my thing, not at all, but I did it for, over 2 years. And it's not that I don't wake up and go to work now. It's just I wake up and I get to sit at my desk in my pajamas and drink a cup of coffee. So, yeah, and it gave me a lot of experience. And one of those things was, self-employment has its benefits and it has its downsides too. Don't get me wrong. But for me, the upside far outweighs the downside for me.
Yeah.
The flexibility and everything.
Well, I definitely have a huge amount of respect for you to understand that at a relatively young age. Because a lot of kids your age, they're still trying to figure it out. And let's face it, I don't know that we ever figure it out completely. But if we at least have a perspective of, what it should be like, I think we're moving in the right direction at that point. So, you talked a little bit about, when you were out there in Idaho and just on the outskirts of Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons and stuff with your mom and Justin. I know for us, when we went through the Tetons, it was just absolutely, breathtaking. I mean, again, you can't even really put it into words. So, was there anything in particular about that, that experience that stuck with you?
Oh yeah. And honestly, specifically, and I ask people this who've been to both all the time, I'm like, which did you enjoy better? And for the majority, it's the Tetons. I think Yellowstone has, like, don't get me wrong, amazing things, but it's hard to wrap your head around sometimes, that place, man. It's some millions and millions of acres, and Tetons is about 1/10 of that. But just to the effect of breathtaking views of mountains with lakes, I just felt like the Tetons really, really had that all. And frankly, it wasn't as packed as Yellowstone was, and I kind of enjoyed that too. I think Tetons just being the park centers are really, really nice there, and being able to see all of the mountains laid out and how they specifically can tell you like where the glacial points are. I thought that was really neat. I believe Jenny Lake was the lake in the Tetons as well that we got to check out, and really, really loved that. So yeah, and we even got to stay when we were going to the Tetons. We stayed in a little town that I liked a little bit better than West Yellowstone. It was called Victor, Idaho, and they had the best fried chicken sandwich I think I've ever had in my damn life. It was so delicious. And this was coming off of my girlfriend and I just did 75 days of completely vegan. We go on this Yellowstone trip, and I see this fried chicken sandwich in this middle of nowhere bar. She gets it the first time, and I get something different. Take a bite of it. It's so damn good. We all go back the next night and all get the same chicken sandwich. It was that damn good. So I really loved Victor. I thought Jackson Hole was nice too. But Tetons, as far as what little big things that make you feel small, man, talk about glacial ice that's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years old. You're kind of like, wow, that is seen a lot of time, and I have not been here that much time comparatively.
Yeah, definitely makes you understand that we were really just a blip on the radar of humanity when it comes right down to it. And you're talking about Jenny Lake. When you go there and you see, the reflection of the Tetons in the water, it's like a Norman Rockwell painting or something like that. It's just, you can't, you're like, wow, man, like this actually really does exist off the canvas.
It's amazing.
So yeah, it's awesome. And again, I can't, put into words the top tiers of what we've experienced, because there's just been so much. And truthfully, we've only scratched the surface. Even when we went through Yellowstone before we met up with you guys, we didn't even get the upper half. We thought we planned enough time, but we were nowhere close to planning enough time. So we did get to see the waterfalls and the Yellowstone Grand Canyon and all that sort of stuff, which was really cool. And obviously Old Faithful and a lot of the other geysers, but we've got to go back just to see the whole upper loop, which we completely, weren't able to get to see.
I think at one time they had the road to Mammoth closed while we were there, so it was really difficult to go there. But we did there was a loop, pretty much like you go in from the sides, and there's this circle in the middle of the map that you can do, and it's almost the same exact way for Tetons. So that circle in the Tetons takes you about like 45 minutes to an hour. And keep in mind, the maps that they give you are the same size. So you look at the Teton map, you look at the Yellowstone map, and unless you're looking at that little mile gauge in the bottom, you think it's the same size. You'd have no damn idea. And then you try to do, so we did the Teton one in like 45 minutes to an hour. We were like, oh man, let's go get lunch. We have time. We did the Yellowstone one. It took us 4.5 hours to do the loop in Yellowstone. And it's the same size map, but the grade is so much wider when it's in Yellowstone, because Yellowstone is so much bigger. So we did this loop, and by the end of it, it was dark. And in the Yellowstone loop, we saw sunny skies, gray, snow, and sleet, all in one loop in Yellowstone. It was like, wow, this is Wyoming. This is Montana. You are at the mercy of Mother Nature. It will do whatever it wants, whenever it wants.
Crazy. And we just got out of there before it started to get cold. Our last night there, it was a little chilly, but I remember texting your mom later that night after we left, and she was like, yeah, it's going to be a low of 29 here. I was like, yeah, we got out at the right time there at that point. So it is crazy the way the weather, and then it gets so warm and nice during the day, it's nuts. Even, we're in Texas now, and we were in Arizona for almost a month. And there are a lot of days where, there was a 35, 40 degree difference between the day's high and the evening's low.
Yeah.
You know, where it would get up to 82 during the day and, you know, with a low of 45 or something. And you're just like, wow, man, that is just so crazy, because it's not what we're used to in Pennsylvania. You know, Pennsylvania, it's usually, if it's a 20 degree difference between the high and the low for the day, it's pretty drastic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is really cool to, you know, to experience the different climates, and, you know, all that sort of stuff is pretty awesome for sure. So
Yeah.
with your, you know, with getting that experience of traveling and doing some traveling with your mom, I mean, how has that helped you in your professional life? I mean, what has that experience been able to, you know, to help you with in your career?
Honestly, I think in a lot of ways, I've taken many trips all over. So, you know, going out west to visit them. Been to Kenya on a mission trip. I've been to Germany, you know, Scotland, France, England. So I've been all over. It kind of just puts his things in perspective, if that is the right word for it, I guess. You know, it makes you, again, when you see people living their own lives and you wouldn't even think for a second in your world that someone isn't thinking about you. You know, there's things going on in cities that you will never ever have any effect on, and that's just the way life is. You're putting yourself in a place that revolves completely without you, and I think that's a really surreal experience, because whether you're there or not, it doesn't really change anything. At home, if you were to be removed, things would be different, but when you're in a place where it's not your place, things move without you. You're kind of released from that. Okay, I have responsibilities, I have things to do. So when I come back home, I try to put myself in those same shoes and be like, okay, when I'm at home, I'm always doing things for other people, not in a negative sense, but I feel as though I have responsibilities to keep up with. Whereas on vacation, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm able to let all that go sometimes, and I'm able to do what I really want to do. When I come home after those trips, I'm like, I really need to do what I want to do. I really need to focus on the goals that I need to focus on, because for me to be able to have those experiences more, I need to get my life in a place where I'm able to have more freedom to do that. So, you know, I'll come home from Joshua. I'll go to a trip, and in my business, there's two sides of it. There's working on the business and there's working in the business. Working in the business is just working on the transactions. That's what consumes your day. Working on the business is the things that get you out from working on the transactions and feed your, you know, deal flow, I call it, or, you know, feed your business, getting more referrals, asking for more business. When I leave on and go on a trip, I find that I'm obsessed with the day-to-day things, the small, minuscule things, and I'm not setting up processes that help me remove myself from the clutter in life and really make sure that I'm working on the most important things that move my personal life forward. So when I go on these trips, I find that I'm caught up in the clutter. And when I come back, I find that I'm more clarified, I guess. I find that if I want to take these trips and put myself in a place where I feel like I can do what I want with my life and what I want with my day, I need to set up processes that run my business and help me, you know, not be a slave to the rat race, essentially, not be a slave to, you got to wake up at 8, you got to be at work by 9, and you got to work all day until you're done. You know, I just don't think that that's the way it needs to be. And being self-employed, I have the liberty of doing my work and then doing a little extra to change things for the long term. So one day I don't have to, you know, be at my job every single day working on my business. One day I'm going to be able to remove myself from my business. Like, my personal goal is to be able to take a 6-month to 9-month RV trip by the time I'm 30, to be able to completely remove myself from my business and have my bills taken care of by, you know, what I'm working on over these next 3 to 4 years. It's a building process, and, you know, I still get small wins in between, but for me, going on these trips builds clarity towards that goal. and helps me stay focused on the things that move me in that direction.
It's cool. I love that. And again, to have that perspective at your age, I think is huge. So I hope some of my listeners heed that advice and understand that, there is a different way to go about life than that rat race that, society oftentimes tells us to be involved with. And I think for, cases like myself and, your mom and Justin, it's like, one of the things I stress to people is like, I don't want anyone to think that like I didn't enjoy what I was doing before we did this. Like I really loved, working in the nonprofit industry and, helping kids and all that sort of stuff. So it's not like hating your job is something that, drives you to leave everything behind and start a new journey. And I think the same goes for your mom and Justin as well. I mean, I would say that they probably really enjoyed what they were doing, but they realized that there was more out there for them to, to partake of, so to speak. And, that's the thing I try to stress to people all the time is that, this can be done. And there's so many opportunities, even if you're not in a situation, financially. I mean, we've met so many people who are, working, whether it's, full-time working remotely while they're doing this or, doing work camping at different, state parks or national parks or private campgrounds. I mean, there's so many ways to do this, that you don't have to worry about, having a stockpile of cash put away to do it. It's just a matter of having the courage to make the move. So that's what I try to tell people all the time is like, look, there's 100 different ways to skin a cat. So, if this is really something that you want to do, just sit down and come up with a plan and figure out how to do it, whether it's, working remotely all the time, whether it's doing work camping, whatever it is, there's definitely a way that you can do this and you can experience what we're experiencing, and still make a living.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, like, my 3-year plan, that's just something I really want to do. Like my mom has had a lot of success and I've been fortunate to watch her do that. And I love the building of something and I love the construction of the business that I'm making. And I love honestly what I do, but I, at the same time, don't think that being a real estate salesperson is what, the universe called me to do or God called me to do. So but I love building a business and I love teaching people the benefits that real estate has on their wealth because it's benefited myself and my family a lot by making smart long-term decisions through that. So, I'm very fortunate to see that for me, what freedom or what, my success is defined for me is something that I have got the ability to watch my parents grow into. So I almost had that path blazed for me to begin with. And I'm very fortunate for that. I don't want to mistake anybody in saying I built everything by myself. Like my mom had me at 16. So, by the time I started watching my mom go through her career, I could start having memories. So by the time I'm 8, she's 24, she's out of college. She got a bachelor's degree as a respiratory therapist. And I'm like, okay, this is my mom. She works at a hospital. Well, by the time she was around 30, I believe, she decided that she wanted to be a real estate investor and completely switched gears. So then I got to watch her in that phase of the same thing I went through. Like, I don't really want to work for somebody else. I want to work on my own. So then I got to watch her go from a 40-hour-a-week job to her self-employed, freedom-filled life of 80 hours a week. She kind of transferred from this, I'm going to work for myself, and gets caught up in what we all get caught up in is building a business and then bringing yourself to the conclusion that, wow, I got to watch her go through this transition of, wow, I don't want to work 80 hours in my own, even if it's in my own business. I don't want to work 80 hours. Like, and I love my business. So then she got to the point where she was like, I'm going to take winter trips to Arizona. And I got her to watch her transition into that phase where she's like, I need to set up processes to let me build a business, but work remotely and still live my life and do what I want to do. So I got to watch her go from, I work for someone else to I work for myself, but I'm still working for myself, and into a place where I'm building a business that allows me to live for myself, not just work for myself. So for me, I got to watch that process. I really enjoyed watching that process. I loved that she built something. And I, as much as I complain about my job to my lady most days, I do really love the process of building a business. So like, that's my dream. That's what I really love to do. But I think that's different for everybody else. So just like, look into your options. That vagabonding book has tons of options and resources that you can figure out ways that you can work remotely. Like, I know agent at Remax, he was like, this isn't my thing. He taught English in Thailand and lived in Thailand for over a year, maybe two. So there is opportunities out there, and you got to figure out what defines like that freedom for you and what you want to do. And I guarantee you there's an opportunity if you wanted to, pack your things up by the end of the year and go somewhere. There's an opportunity for you to do that without a doubt. For me, I want to build something and build a business and do that when I'm 30, because that's what I want to do. But that doesn't have to be everybody's plan. It's like it's up to what your heart calls you to do.
Right. And really just having the courage to make that step. I mean, we get so hung up and, at home in our comfort zone that, it takes courage to leave that comfort zone, whether it's the comfort zone, of working an 80-hour week, which seems kind of, when people hear that, they're like, that's really a comfort zone. Well, actually, yes, it is. It is a comfort zone for some people. That's what I was doing. I was working 80 hours a week, and it was a comfort zone. I loved what I was doing. But, having the courage to say, what, we're going to take this next step. That's really what it's all about. And, again, I hope, my listeners out there, really take this to heart, that if there's something they want to do, and it doesn't have to be living in an RV full time, like you said, it can be whatever that next experience is for you. Figure out what it is and have the courage to take that leap.
But do it for yourself. Whatever it is, it has to be for yourself. Like, if that's, taking a 3-month Napa vacation, if that's for you, you need to set that for you. If that's, another book that I love reading, Dan, I'm going to be honest, but the 4-Hour Work Week, it's another book that even if you work for someone else, you can take steps to live your life for yourself. You have those 40 hours a week that you may have to work for someone else, but the rest of that time is yours. You can spend it doing nothing, or you can spend it contributing to a life that's really the life you dream for. So, I'm a firm believer that you are in control of your own life, you're in control of your own pursuits. And at the end of the day, what you put time towards will create things in abundance for you if you go towards it with positivity. So, you have, anybody listening, you have the control to take that on yourself and kind of move your life in the direction that you want it to go, not, your career necessarily, but wherever your heart really calls you to go, you should do those things and take those small steps, because it all adds up. It really does.
I agree. I agree 100%. So we're just about out of time, but anything that we didn't cover before I get to my final question?
No, I just really appreciate you having me on, Dan. This has been really cool. And it's also like so neat and coincidental that your mom tells you she's going on a long-term trip. My mom tells me she's going on a long trip. We're both from Berks County. The 1 out of 2 times I visit April and Justin in the year that they're out west, you're actually at the same RV park on the last couple days that you're there. It was just the largest set of coincidences that I can't even call it a coincidence. It was meant to be. I was meant to come on here. I was meant to chat with you. I'm really thankful.
I agree completely. I truly don't think that anything happens by chance. I think that God puts certain people in our paths at certain times for a certain reason. And, we may not know it at the time. It may take a couple weeks, and then you kind of reflect. And that's even with, I don't know what made me think of it, but I'm always out, looking for guests. I mean, the topic of my podcast is so broad. It goes from, my old life of sports. I have a lot of sports figures, a lot of baseball figures, to full-time RVers, to volunteers. So, there's this really wide spectrum of the type of guests that I have on my podcast. And I was just thinking, I was like, wow, you know what? It would be really cool to have Alex on here and get another, son's perspective of, the reaction of his mother telling him, that she was going to go out and do this crazy thing. So I definitely appreciate you agreeing to come on, and it's been a great time talking. So.
Yeah. And to prelude to your final question too, like, it was crazy to me. I was reading the notes for the show doc, and I was like, okay, so the Michael Franti thing sounds awesome. And I have this specific memory, and I think I mentioned it to you in text. I have this specific memory of when I took the trip out west. My friend and I were staying in Yosemite National Park, and my buddy is just nuts. I can't even put it in any other way, but I found out how nuts he is when you're sleeping in a Honda Accord for 3 weeks with another guy. You figure out how nuts somebody is. So he goes, we're in the middle of nowhere, and I go, all right, man, these look like some pretty cool trails. Do you want to go on these trails? He's like, nah, man, that's not how you get in nature. You don't go on trails. You just take hikes. I'm like, all right, well, there's grizzly bears in these woods. Like, I don't know if I want to just take a hike. But he's like, let's take a hike. So it was just funny. But I have this specific memory. We're in the middle of the woods, not on a trail, kind of getting a little bit lost. And then next thing you know, as we're both listening to a song on our phone to, A, keep bears away, and B, be able to listen to music. And as Michael Franti comes on, we look over the horizon and we can see the camp below. We can see exactly where we need to go. And we both look at each other and we're just like, oh yeah, this is it. And I forget the song, but it's like, hey, where we gonna stay? I'll be back and around the way, something like that. But it was a fantastic memory. So I was like, oh man, this is great. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's funny because most of the time when I bring up Franta to most people, they're like, oh, never heard of him, so it's always, it's always good for someone to come and say, oh yeah, I've listened to Michael Franta. I'm a fan. So it is kind of funny, again, you get that broad spectrum of people. That are on the show. So it's cool that you have that memory of a Frante song as you thought you might have been lost in the woods.
Right. It was like as the sunshine clears, Michael Franti comes on. Yeah.
That's cool. So again, as you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from Gloria, from that same Sound of Sunshine album that song you were just talking about was on. And the lyrics go, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. So what's one of the little things that Alex does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
Yeah. So I asked my assistant this question, and she had such a great response. I wish I could have recorded her and then just like played it right now, because she was literally like, are you kidding me? Because there's this guy in New York, right? And he has this barbershop or a hair studio. And every Saturday, he's super successful. Every Saturday in Manhattan, he cuts hair on for the homeless people. And I'm like, oh my God, that's something little that someone does every week, or, every day their day off, they take that day. And I'm like, that's something little that somebody does. And I'm like, well, I don't like go and, give out food every day. I don't have something specific that I do. Kind of made it clear that, and my girlfriend as well, we are super firm on creating a sense of community every single day in any fashion that we can. So for me, like, I put together dog drives for people, even if it's just saying, hey, have you heard of this place? Like, you should get in touch with them. It's a really good charitable organization. My parents are also very involved with a bunch of different charitable communities. So little things that I do every day, see the degrees of the actions that you make. We just took in a couple cats and are getting them neutered. And that might seem like a little thing, but that's going to produce less stray cats in the neighborhood. You can do something small for someone that you may think is just a small thing for you, but in the long run, it ends up making somebody's day. So just do the little things. See that the small things actually create a bigger sense of community, and just putting out those general, good energy and good vibes, it brings greatness to the world, and it brings happiness and community, and everyone feels stronger and supported in the end.
I love that answer. So again, Alex, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad we're able to connect, and hopefully, sometime down the road we'll be in the same campground as your mom and Justin when you come to visit, or better yet, a few years down the road, you with your RV end up in the same campground as the rest of us as well. It'll
I'll be calling you because I know it's going to be where it's warm. I'll be giving you a buzz. Don't worry.
We've been very fortunate to be able to chase good weather. I mean, there have been a couple times where, we woke up and it was pretty cold, or it was pretty cold overnight, but really for the most part, we've been incredibly fortunate to be able to chase good weather, so far, knock on wood. And we'll be in Texas, we'll be in Beaumont through the holidays, and then heading to Florida. So we should have some pretty good weather in front of us as well. But it's been awesome for us. And, again, meeting people, like yourself and, all the other people that we've met on this journey has been what's been so cool about it. Seeing the things is one thing, but connecting with the people is really what gives it the whole new dimension and a whole other perspective of, being able to make those human connections with others.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that.
No. Well, again, I thank you for your time. And for those out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts, blogs, and Clouser.com. Alex, thanks again so much for taking the time today.
Thanks, Sam. Have a great one.